Welcome to the PeopleNova Podcast. My name is Rachel O'Neill. Today's episode, we chat about the human side of business, the blur between personal and professional life, the relationships we nurture, and our own self-awareness. Are you wondering how to build courage within yourself? Are you wondering how to create a healthy culture? Are you wondering how to build authentic, trusting relationships with colleagues? Well, tune in and learn the underpinnings of emotional intelligence. We're chatting today with a social-emotional learning expert, Shaunda Lewis. Stay tuned. Hi, Shaunda.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, Rachel.
How are you?
Good.
Can you do us a favor and introduce yourself? Tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Shaunda Lewis. Currently, I am a program director for social and emotional learning at an organization called Boston After School and Beyond. And I am co-directing Boston, the city of Boston's participation in a national social emotional learning initiative focused on how it is that we bring school and out of school time, after school enrichment partners together to create this seamless experience, high quality experience for kids, thinking about the entire learning day. You know, the bottom line is associated with, supporting people, understand they are human, and
I get so excited to hear you talk because I'm like, yeah, say more. Because, right, so you're working with youth and children, right? Yeah. And I'm working with adults, who have really ingrained patterns of behavior. And it's like, oh, we can change, but it's kind of harder when you're an adult. And you're working with youth, which is so admirable, right? Because at some point, these are going to be, contributing, working employers. They're going to start their own businesses, right? And they're going to be socially, emotionally in tune. Like I love these people already, and I don't know them.
Yeah, I don't work directly with the kids, right? I support the adults that work with the kids, and everyone wants to jump to, how do we help the kids? How do we support the kids? And we're like, whoa. Do you know what social emotional learning is? Like, do you have good awareness?
Like, folks,
you have good communication skills? Because, some things we can work on, right? So a big part of the work has been just adult learning.
Great.
Adult support. How do we develop adults, improve their social emotional development? Because it's a never-ending process, right? It's an ongoing thing. When you think about it, like, different people have different definitions of what this idea of, developing the whole person or social emotional learning means. But, to me and to us in Boston, we take into consideration, a lot more than just like being nice or kind, or this is how I'm feeling in the moment. We take into consideration the fact that, like, our district is majority minority. It's majority Black and brown kids. The way in which every kid needs social emotional learning, every adult needs social emotional development and opportunities to express themselves and to just gain, build their awareness and understanding of the world around them. But it looks different for different groups of people, and taking into consideration the social dynamics that are at play. So infusing the ideas of racial equity, gender equity, all of these ideas and concepts. It's the balance of like power and privilege and disadvantage and all those things that a lot of who you are and what you look like and, where you come from, the amount of money you have play in how you're able to advance or succeed in our societal structure. It's getting, it has the potential to get deep and to get kids talking about things, and adults who probably normally wouldn't be talking about these issues, talking about them, exploring them, and having some hard discussions, right? Which I think is, we talk about like, where does like true learning and growth happen? It happens through that discomfort. When folks kind of just are thrown something or have to explore a concept, something that's very different from what they know, it's causing that cognitive dissonance, right? Like, what's going on, and that's not like, was taught like, no, you're all wrong. You're making me feel bad.
Yeah. The emotions are stirring and I don't know what's happening, right?
Exactly.
I call it grinding gears, right? So if we ever play charades together and I go like this, it means cognitive dissonance, right?
Okay.
Grinding gears. But that's exactly what I told my students. And that's exactly what I tell, the founders and the CEOs that I work with is, learning is an emotional process. You were going to feel emotions, right? So let's start there. Like, let's start with a vocabulary. Do you have a vocabulary to identify what's going on inside of you?
Yeah.
And so again, one of the things that I start with is there's a handful, right? But I picked 3 different lists of vocabulary words for emotions. And one's the classic wheel, right? With core emotions in the middle and then granularity coming out. Another list is by alphabetical, right? So it's all different fields, but it's alphabetical for my systemic organized people. And then and I have another list for like groupings, like these are all different groupings of sad emotions. And these are groupings of all different angry emotions, right? And so I usually put at least 3 different options in front of folks when I work with them on this topic to be like, find whichever one resonates with you. And some people are visual, so they like the wheel. Some people are alphabetical, right? So I'm like, great, fine, we can stick with alphabet, right? But like, let's use a common framework to start discerning what is the difference between anger and frustration, right? And naming those things, right? And then we can get to the point of identifying when those situations happen in our either work context or our interaction contexts.
Yeah, no, I think, having the vocabulary in general, but also having the shared vocabulary is really powerful. And that's, that you're able to do that with kids, right? Because these schools and after school programs are adopting a shared curriculum around how to help students build these skills and explore these emotions. So you have little like 4-year-olds, K0 or whatever we call it, talking about how their amygdala and how they're charged, their parts of the brain and how they need to engage their prefrontal cortex, talking about the different parts of the brain. And
oh my gosh, I love
applying science to, emotions, which is, I think it's a big push at this whole thing. It's like, well, these are soft skills. How do you even measure this? We're doing an intense job trying to figure out how to, what's the best way to measure if we're being effective and impactful in building skills. But, I think at the end of the day, it's like, there's no doubt that when these things, when you're able to explore this stuff with people in general and, get them to just be more in tune, I mean, you're having a positive impact. Like, I'm not one who consistently has to rely on data, but I know there's so many people out there that just like need the hard data in order to, feel comfortable with what's happening. But it's so powerful when you're able to walk into, a restorative justice circle with adults and talking about, things that you saw they were not able to talk about a month ago or resolve conflict, in a way. And then to see that happen, to walk into a school building and the culture is completely transformed, where it was depressing and sad before. And now you walk in and you can just feel the joy, and kids are coming up to you and saying, good morning, hello, how are you? Teachers, everyone, like little 4 and 5-year-olds talking about the parts of the brain. Or when you see a difficult moment, right? Where an educator or someone, or a youth worker has the vocabulary or the protocol to use, like they have a lanyard in front of them that have one of the curricula that we use as second step, had like the calm down steps, problem solving steps, and everyone's familiar with it. So when a student gets, charged or triggered, when they're able to have that one-on-one moment to help them calm down. Okay, so let's walk through the calm down steps, and the student's able to go through those steps and they calm down, and you're like,
because both the facilitator and the student know the steps, right? But like having a moment where it's hard to apply the steps, but you have a buddy that's walking you through them.
Exactly.
That's powerful. Like, oh my gosh.
This is not stuff that just kids will benefit. I mean, this is stuff that we should have posted throughout our office. So that like, it's like, we should have like posted. So we're in a meeting and then it gets contentious. It's like, okay, let's name like, how do we calm down? Now, how do we problem solve,
Not to be like in a cliche kind of a way, but like conflict management among adults is a huge topic in workplaces.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, this is why I admire all the work that you're doing, is because you're starting such at an early age, right? And these are lessons that are going to stay. I know the impact, right? The data, right? Like I know the impact. I know it's going to stay with these students as they mature, as they become, fully functioning adults, able to go into workplace and handle it, handle conflict, or handle like, how do I approach the situation? How do I realize, oh, this is a trigger in okay, this is all me. Got it. This is not Shaunda. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, that's tough to look inward, and to, but the way that we describe it, it's like, how do you, we have a framework that we use that's aligned to the majority of the major frameworks out there around idea of social emotional learning. And so basically what we say is that if a young person or adult, anyone, is equipped with interpersonal skills such as teamwork, communication, just that ability to work to work between another person, intrapersonal skills such as self-awareness, self-efficacy, are more equipped for success. And
more intentional about success, right?
Exactly.
As opposed to being passive and saying, oh, that was lucky, or I was just fortunate, right? No, like I don't know about you, but I believe in the camp of like, success is hard work. And like, I need to work at it. I need to be intentional. I need to enjoy it, right? Hard work can be fun and joyful, but it is work, right? And it is deliberate and intentional.
Yeah. And, being an agent in their life trajectory, right? So having this sense of agency, having an elevated sense of confidence, and again, a part of that is just like, we know that there are so many conditions and circumstances like that are beyond our control that keep us, in certain places, understanding that, if there's a sense of self and a sense of what's happening around you, you can find ways to navigate around some of those things. I've also had the opportunity to participate in an inaugural course with Harvard Business School. So their first year MBA students, for the first time, had to all 900 students had to take this required course around interpersonal skill development. And
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
So I had a cohort of 30 kids, adults, 30 people who were, and think about it, B school kids, like,
oh yeah.
Like,
we know this. We got this.
Yeah. They're like, what do I need this for? It's not what I came here for.
Exactly. This is squishy, whatever.
Yeah.
Teach me how to win.
I mean, it was a very rewarding. I mean, you were talking about the joy that you felt having gotten through the course that you taught.
Yes.
And to see the transformation with students and what they're able to take away from the experience. Same thing, just to see the transformation from students and this greater appreciation for the fact that, like, wow, if I pay attention to people, if I like get out of my own way and, just be present and cognizant of like what's happening, and then have these skills to be able to, it'll help me greatly in achieving success, and they're able to go through some simulations where, that they would possibly be in the business world, and use and apply these skills and just see the difference, between what happened when they weren't intentional and what happens when they were. There's things like that. And my whole thing is if Harvard's prioritizing this stuff,
it got real.
I mean, I think that, like, okay, maybe we should all prioritize it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I totally agree. Okay. So we're totally nerding out over this because we get it, right? Like, we're practitioners in this space, like, we understand it. But if this phrase, right, social emotional learning, is new for one of our audience members, aside from just Googling it, right, and who knows what results you're going to get based on your algorithm, like, where would you suggest our listeners go to learn more and to like self-educate a little bit and help start that awareness raising?
Sure. I think that the standard setter nationally for the field of social emotional learning is CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. They basically coined the term, I think, 20 or 30 years. I mean, they were ahead of the game.
Wow, that long ago.
Yeah.
Because it's new in my vocabulary. I mean,
yeah.
In the business world, we've talked about emotional intelligence since 2000. I think I remember it being in vocabulary. But social emotional learning has only been in my vocabulary recently, like maybe the past 5 years.
Yeah, they were talking about it in the 90s, I think. And,
Great.
And yeah, so and basically have supported the national and international push to prioritize this work. But I mean, yeah, it's emotional intelligence is basically what we're talking about. And but they have, go onto their website. They have a number of tools like video. I mean, they have what most of us base our definitions off of, which is the CASEL wheel.
Great.
So like how we divide it into intra, and applied. I mean, theirs basically does the same thing, but focus more on like the self, the social, and then like the decision making into like 5 different buckets, but basically that. So you'll see a lot of frameworks kind of like color code with theirs.
Okay.
Line to it. But yeah, that's the first place I would go. But I mean, this conversation is happening all throughout education, K through 12 and higher ed. People are having the conversation. I wouldn't say there's a defined definition, like, standard definition. Everyone has their own thing and veers in a certain direction based on what is it they want to accomplish. I think that is the CASEL is definitely the entity that grounds us in the work. Yeah. Yep.
That's great. I will make sure to put a link for our audience to double click on that so they can help continue their awareness and their journey. Because the point of our podcast is about the human side of business, right? So you're in education. I'm like, okay, but those folks are going to be, in the workforce at some point, right? So I'm like, all right, there's a thread, right? That makes sense. So as you, as you think about kind of the workplaces that you've been a part of or the success stories that you've seen, right? Those moments that just fill you with joy. What are some of the stories that come to mind about the human side of business, right? And the human side of workplaces and how, I don't know about you, but I am a firm believer that people really are genuinely trying to do the right thing, right? And I believe in the best of people. Yep, sometimes we get very passionate about something and that may lead to a little bit of conflict, but it's really about the other humans in our ecosphere, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, it's interesting, like, when we talk about this idea or concept of social emotional learning, I like to say to people, like, it's nothing new, it's youth development. And so when we talk about emotional intelligence or applying that concept to adults and to the workplace, it's nothing new. It's emotional intelligence. It's human development, right? Mm-hmm. And tapping into the human side of things. And I think, those organizations, whether they be for-profit, nonprofit, public entities that focus on creating healthy culture, really, focus on creating inclusive environments that prioritize diversity in all aspects of the term, tend to do well with just, supporting their staff. And, and I think that comes with understanding self and others. So, when you have, and also having a clear understanding of expectations, right? I think about it in this way. It's like, okay, I can have a leader that's completely open to like everything, but they're not decisive. Like they're not directive. So kind of just, you have a lack of direction for the rest of the staff. They don't know where they're going, like what's coming, what's going, whatever. And even if it's like, okay, well, I feel supported by my supervisor, but I just don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Like that is, so I would say like that, the idea of structure and a direction and a vision, and being able to work under that is something that allows for you then to be able to use the strategies to support people in being able to work towards that vision and to buy into it, is what really, when people are able to do that well, then I think you have a strong environment and are able to support people. But listen, I had my boss just had a staff meeting, a virtual staff meeting just now. And like, I was saying, I'm so happy that, I know that it's under horrible circumstances, but I'm so happy that they just like the governor just made the decision to cancel school, like for the rest of the year, because we're just floating,
Yes. Yeah. The absence of a decision is really, really hard.
Yeah.
But at least you have something to work with now. Exactly.
And he was like, oh, so Shaunda, I take it that you're Myers-Briggs, you have a J in there, don't you? And I was like, what?
That's great.
Yeah. But just, I mean,
do you have a J? I'm so curious.
I do. Yeah, I'm an ENTJ, which is very like commandery and like need to know.
Oh, that's great. I'm ISTJ. So I have a J.
Okay.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm great at making decisions.
Yeah, let's go.
That's it. Let's go. Like, I don't know if it's the right one, but I'm going to make a decision and we're going to figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah. Those environments where there's been clear direction, clear vision, clear leadership, and then those opportunities to get to know self and others, like for us to be able to sit down and go through a workshop with the rest of the team and, explain, our way of doing things and where we come from, our perspective, but then also leave the space open for others to share theirs. And just that awareness of self and others then allows you to be able to work really well. It's not, allows you to be effective in how you work together. And it's not about, in my experience, it's not about liking, like I don't have to like really love my coworkers or like them, but I respect them. Like,
yeah,
I respect them. It's not that I trust them, like, with my baby or whatever. Like, I trust them to get done what they said they're going to get done. That's
yeah. The credibility, the follow through, the like, yep. Okay, great. Awesome. Like, here we go. You made a commitment. I can trust that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And then when we get into conflict, I'm not out here just like guessing or making assumptions about this person. I've given, allowed the time, or the time has been allowed for the environment that I work in for me to get to know the person the way that they want others to know them.
Great.
Right? Not for me. They get to tell me who they are, what they value, whatever it may be,
Great.
How they work. And then, I can say, I'm not sitting here like, why is it that Johnny didn't do X, Y, and Z?
Mm-hmm.
That's so disrespectful. I can't believe he would do that. Like, whatever. And it's like, or why didn't he do it this way? Or why didn't he respond to my email in 2 seconds? It's like, well, instead, but if I know, like, Johnny's a processor, like, Johnny more time to whatever.
That's me. I'm a processor. Yeah, more time.
Like, he's an introvert. Like, it's not as easy for him to just walk up to my desk and say, Shaunda, here, or I have this question, or here it is. It's like, taking all that into consideration, I can then, really be more intentional about how it is that I work with him and, and respect his way of working.
Right.
If he knows me, he can respect my way of working, and we can find ways to connect. And if we get into conflict, it's easier to overcome because we're able to just have that base level understanding of each other.
Yeah. I just gave a workshop to the cohort at the Harvard iLab, and it was really about equity splits among co-founders, right? Mm-hmm. But the bulk of the conversation was around self-awareness. How well do you know your co-founder? Sometimes, right? I jokingly called it 36 questions of fallen wealth. Right? There's this whole meme going around right now with all the couples staying in quarantine, 36 questions to fall in love. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of funny. Let me do a little parody on that. But it was around, do you understand the mental models around how your co-founder works? Like it may be someone that you have known over a while or not. It may be someone that, you kind of knew, like 2 degrees of separation, right? But has a skill set, is interested in your mission, your passion, right? So I went through a series of questions with the cohort of like, know this about yourself, self-awareness, right? Am I an introvert? Do I need processing time? And so when the extrovert comes, raging at my desk, like, okay, what does that mean? Right? Do I know this about myself? Do I know this about my coworker, my co-founder? Like, have I had the conversation? Right? It's not just, I'm going to assume that Rachel is outgoing and an extroverted person because here she is like chatting with the whole, no, people, I am friendly. And that is different than being an introvert.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't just make assumptions, like have the conversation with the people. And if it's uncomfortable to have the conversation, like, great, let's self-check. Like, where are we at?
Yeah. And, I would say this too. It's like, getting to know people takes time.
It does.
And I, it's so interesting how many people like want to expedite that process or find like, tell me how, just like whatever. And it's like,
what's the formula? Let me just input there's no formula, folks. Humans are wonky. They're beautiful.
Yeah. You can't skip over these things. Like truly getting to know others takes time. Building relationships, just in general takes time. And so allowing yourself that time and that space, and then also, being real. I mean, when you're intentional about building the skill set to build, authentic relationships, trusting relationships, and trust takes time.
It
takes time, and when it's broken, it takes time to rebuild. So
let's talk more about trust. It's one of my favorite topics, and I've definitely worked with leaders who don't trust, and then I've definitely encountered people that I trust immediately, right? We're able to like open up and share deeply. And it's just, and I find myself, because I know, right? I have a self-awareness, I have a level of self-awareness that, I know it takes me time to trust people. And I was chatting with another friend and he's like, no, I trust people immediately to a fault almost. I was like, oh yeah, no, that's not me. How do you like, what are some strategies to like either understand myself, where my trust is, understand somebody else's trust, if maybe they're not self-aware of how they trust other people? How do you unpack that?
I think it's just different for everyone, right? Like, and this is where it's just allowing yourself the time to get to know people. Some people may have had trust broken in the past.
Yeah.
And it's just really hard for them to, to gain the trust, like for others to gain their trust. Right. But I mean, I think that for everyone, there's that point where you eventually do trust someone. It just takes some longer than it takes others, right? And this is where it's just getting to know people, providing the space to get to know them, and like trying to authentically build a relationship with them. I'll give an example, right? So I also I mean, it's tough. It's tough because I am I'm Black, and in the Black community in general, it's like living in this part of the world, right? Living in the like Western environment, where so much has happened, for us to like not trust people, right?
Yeah, you have a legit history.
We are basically, I mean, I grew up basically being told, you can't trust these people. Like, you can't trust those people. And so like when I got into the work environment and I'm in the majority, and even in, in school and stuff, I'm in predominantly white institutions and organizations. And I mean, people are throwing around this concept of trust. It's like, well, yeah, you just need to trust people. You just need to trust. Like, I don't trust you. Like, what are you talking about?
But come on, people.
Like, I had this very different concept and understanding of trust. And I was taught to just trust people, right? It's something I was taught. It's a survival mechanism because of all the things that do happen you know, just because of like institutional and structural racism, like, you know, or sexism or whatever.
Right. The power dynamic, right? Like how the power dynamic comes out. And there's a lot of legacy folks. There's a lot to unpack there. So if you're in the majority sector and you start talking about trust, I really am not going to talk, like, listen.
Yeah. But, you know, but at the end of the day, when it's broken down differently, like I just in general, have always been interested in this idea or concept of like, you know, how it is that we work together and develop self and, you know, understand others. And, you know, so just having it broken down differently. And it's like, well, it's not about trust of, not even that space to have that conversation. So I was able to have conversation with coworkers and they're like, I don't know about that. And they're like, well, and then, you know, we go back and forth, and we've obviously developed that relationship to be able to go back and forth. So obviously some level of trust there. And it's like, well, I don't really mean trust that way. I mean trust this way. And it's like, okay, and then get down to, do you trust that basic trust? Do you trust that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do at work? It's like, well, yeah, I do.
Great.
Yeah, I trust that you're going to do it. And it's like, okay, so we have trust.
Great.
Like, that's an understanding of trust. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, it's like understanding people. When you understand people, when you just learn more about them, you're able to find ways to build trust and what those strategies are. And I think, to be honest, the strategies are providing the space to authentically get to know them, not genuinely get to know people, you know, and from like, I'll give another example. It's like, you know, when a meeting is, when someone is curious about some aspect of me, because it's different, you know, like what, like if I wear my hair differently, and I get asked about it, it's like, that makes me feel, I get asked about it in a space that is like in a boardroom with everyone around the table, like we have an important meeting and the meeting is stopped to inquire about my hair. I don't feel safe. And I don't trust that you have my best intentions in mind, you know? And if I did before, that trust has been broken because you didn't take the time to, like, in the space to authentically and genuinely get to know me and to be able to build that trust, to ask that question, to know where the proper place is to ask that question. Right?
I mean, it just seems like, and I wasn't there, you lived it firsthand, but from an outsider, that just seems like superficial chit chat that is actually more harmful than it's constructive.
Well, it's like what do they call it? As exoticism or exotification. Like, it's like you're making me feel othered in a space where it should be helping to make me feel included.
Yeah.
And but you know, too, it's like, it's okay to be curious about others, like,
but there's a time and a place.
There's a time and a place, right? And
choose your moment.
Yeah, choose your moment. And obviously, you know, you didn't feel comfortable enough with me. You may think that like it was an okay place and moment, but you didn't feel comfortable enough with me to have that conversation one-on-one, right? And so that, to me, tells me that you didn't take the time and create the space to genuinely get to know me. Like, you're afraid to do that. You skip over that step. And this, well, why are, like, Shauna's the angry Black, like, why is she, like, you know, why is she not engaging or whatever? And it's like, because you just created, you broke my trust, and you didn't even, like, you didn't initially take the steps to build it, you know? So yeah, you know, like, getting to know people, creating the space, listening, like actively listening to them. So doing less talking than, you know, if you're a talker, if you're someone who has to like occupy space, create space, inquire about them, you know, but the proper time and place, you know, to do that. And, you know, you'll get to know people, trust will be, you know, they'll get to talk about themselves, right? The way they want to be talked about, you know, the way in which they want to express who they are. And so you don't make these assumptions about who they are. They tell you who they are. And that is what you have in your head about them. Like, it's just like, I mean, I'm guilty of it. We all like judge and have like, prejudgments, which leads to like prejudices and, preferences or whatever it may be. How many times I've had, my assumptions like checked because I actually got to know someone. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, or I never would have thought that, or like that completely blows like my mind. Like, you don't come off as that person like initially, but who am I to know or tell a person who they are? Like, I didn't give that person time or space to let me know who they are. Provide the space, get to know people, actively listen to them, inquire about them, allow them to talk about them, and you'll get to know them. And I think, through that process, you'll be able to build trust.
We've spent a lot of time talking about empathy and building trust and getting to know people. So my final question, because I want to get to know you, what is your favorite art? And here's why. Here's my why, right? There's a great quote from Darren Walker. He says, "Without art, there's no empathy. And without empathy, there's no justice."
Favorites are tough for me. I'm just a lover of art in general. I mean, I think that effective art to me is really like the written art form, like language, general speaking, written. I like to say that I use myself as a muse. I love like expressing, like, you know how some artists, whether they're like visual artists or like hairdressers, DJs, whatever they may be, they tend to wear like a lot of black and don't really pay attention to themselves. I notice that a lot. Like a lot of my friends who, are creative, they tend to wear a lot of black and keep it simple for them, but then create these amazing external masterpieces. I'm one that's like, I love it when someone I love to express myself through, I'm my own muse, right? I love like, any type of visual, vibrant, anything. But yeah, I would say like, as far as what I think is like effective art, definitely language, I think is effective. We talked about it at the beginning, right? Like having a shared language, just having language in general I think is so effective and impactful. It's a way of communicating. But yeah, I mean, I love all art, so that's a tough question for me.
It is a tough question, but I'm learning, like every guest I ask this question, art is a big part of my world as well, as you know, and there's so many mediums out there. There's so many modalities, and again, helping our listeners find a way to spark empathy in themselves, enjoy the arts, find an art, find a modality that does resonate with you. I don't have to use the word favorite, right? And lean into that and help open up those emotional expressions. I think is really, really helpful. And I think it can serve humanity. I think it serves every individual.
I'll also say music. Like I'm one who, like, I don't understand why people get in the car and like drive in silence. How
That's me.
Like I have friends who are so expressive and like, love to go out and dance and stuff. And then when I'm in the car with them and it's silent. I just like to drive in silence. I'm like, drive in silence.
Who does that?
Where every moment I get, I need to, every free moment I get, I want to fill it with music. But yeah, I think in general, creativity is amazing. I mean, that's another human skill. Skill, creativity, like, and being able to express yourself is just so whatever way that that allows you to do that, do it. Try not to let things inhibit that creativity in you, and let other forms of creativity inspire you.
Yeah. I remember early in my career, I was very self-conscious and I was very like, no, I need to like follow the steps. And I happened to like mention to my boss at the time, I was like, oh, no, I'm not very creative. Like, oh, that's for other people. And he's like, no, you're very creative. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know. Right? So I think I definitely experienced that of like, no, you have to not be creative. You have to like put your head down and work hard and like do the thing, which, when I finally got in touch with that creativity, I really finally let myself explore that. I realized how much of that was in my history, right? My father's mother was a graphic designer and was an artist and made arts and crafts for our entire family. And those are our most cherished family tokens, right? Like when Grammy O'Neill made Christmas ornaments for us. It was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then on my mother's side, her father was a painter. I mean, like, yes, he painted houses, but he also did, this is not his work, this is someone else's, but he also did like wall paintings. And I'm like, both sides of my family have art in them. I'm like, I gotta have something in me. And I finally found it, which I think has helped me be a more empathetic person. But I'm also an introvert, so I can drive 4 hours in a car without music.
That's cool. But you are a creative. I can see, you like to express yourself. And
my little streak. You
always have the streak, and like, so you're not afraid to, and that's kind of where, I would love for everyone to be able to get to that place where they're just not afraid to be themselves.
Oh, it is such a healthy place, right? And my heart goes out to the youth that feel that they can't express themselves, that feel like they have to be, conform to a certain majority perspective or standard, right? My heart goes out to individuals in transition, with their gender reassignment, like, my heart absolutely goes out to them, right? Because there's so much internal struggle going on that they can't let their fullness come forward, right? Yeah. It just makes my heart cry.
Yeah. But I think that's it. Like, I guess it's in general, it's tough to find ways to lead. I think you have a majority of people that, find it a lot easier to follow and to not just like step into their stance and be who they are, no matter what you also have like so many implications and consequences to be in doing that. So yeah, how do we build the strength and courage up in people, to be able to step into who they truly are, and then also, build that resilience, overcome those struggles. And usually when you have like these adverse experiences, it causes trauma, right? Because it gets stored, stored in your hippocampus. Your hippocampus, where memories are stored, as a adverse experience, as a traumatic experience, and that's where post-traumatic stress comes from. And but if you're able to flip it, if we're able to teach people like, no, like stick up for who you are, be yourself, and yes, you're going to have these experiences, but don't get discouraged, whatever, like that, this too shall pass, or we'll help you through that. Like, how do we flip it and help them turn it into positive experience, or like an experience that they're able to overcome. Yeah, my life mission is to build resilient people in general, and one of my life missions. But how do we just do that and allow people, and hopefully be able to live in a world, or get closer to living in a world where people can be who they want to be.
I love that you said the phrase, this too shall pass. And it actually came up. So as part of my quarantine practice, I'm doing a 21 day of abundance meditation led by just online with Deepak Chopra, right? So he does the meditation, guided meditation, right? And one of the practices, they were like, okay, reflect on this parable about the origin of this too shall pass, right? And I hadn't read the parable ever before. And I always associated that phrase with like, oh, the bad times, they shall pass, just like, don't worry, or like work through it, right? But like the bad times will pass. But the parable actually says the good times, they will also pass, right? This too shall pass. So don't ride high on your hog saying this is amazing, because this shall also pass, right? And have the humility to realize life is both of those really, emotionally adverse things that stay with us, hopefully we learn from, right? And really positive things that also generate, good memories. But that's life, right? They're both of them.
Yeah.
Shaunda, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. It's lovely chatting with you. As always, we could nerd out forever on this, but
thank you for having me. Yeah, thank you.
My name is Rachel O'Neill. The team here at PeopleNova Human Capital would love to hear from you. We are always curious to hear from our listeners. So go ahead and send us an email, podcast@peoplenovahc.com, with your workplace questions or suggestions for who you'd like to see on our show. If you send us an audio memo, we may include your question on the show. Lastly, we are here to amplify. Our guests are amazing entrepreneurs, and we want you to forward our newsletter to someone in your network who needs to know the amazing things our guests are doing, so together we can make an impact. Thank you so much. Take care, and we will see you next time.